Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Non-profit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. I make these for entertainment purposes, taking movies and such, and reimagine.
Have you ever wondered what would have happened if the Grinch didn't forgive the citizens of Whoville? Well, if you have, today you will wonder no more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this Christmas, horror. You get it. Anyway, let's get started. Chapter 1. Cardiomegaly. The medical term is cardiomegaly. In the textbooks of human medicine, it is a pathology, a dangerous swelling of the heart muscle that leads to shortness of breath, palpitations, and eventual failure. But in Whoville, a town governed by sugar-spun logic and aggressive cheer, they called it a miracle. They said his heart grew 3 sizes that day. They cheered. They carved the roast beast. They never asked if it hurt. It had been 10 years since the Grinch had descended from Mount Crumpet, breaking the isolation of a lifetime to embrace the so-called Christmas spirit. 10 years of forced smiles, 10 years of enduring the cacophony, 10 years of that swollen, monstrous organ beaten against his ribs like a trapped bird, bruising his lungs, pressing against his sternum until every breath was a ragged gasp of agony. The Grinch sat in his high-backed chair, the upholstery tattered and smelling of damp fur. He pressed a long green finger against his chest. Thump, 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 thump. It was loud in the cave, echoing off the jagged rock walls. It was slower now, heavy and wet, like a drum filled with sludge. "Max," he croaked. There was no answer. The Grinch's yellow eyes, now rimmed with the red veins of chronic insomnia, shifted to the corner of the room. There, resting on a velvet pillow, lay Max. The little dog had passed 3 winters ago. The Whos had offered to bury him in the town square, under the great tree, with a plaque that read, "The best reindeer." The Grinch had refused. Instead, he had used his knowledge of chemistry and taxidermy, hobbies developed during 53 years of solitude, to preserve him. Max looked asleep, though his fur was stiff and his glass eyes caught the flickering light of the dying fire with a lifeless, judgmental stare. "They're starting early this year, Max," the Grinch whispered, standing up. His knees popped. His spine, curved from years of slouching and hatred, cracked like dry timber. He walked to the precipice of his cave and looked down. It was only November, yet the lights were already on. A grid of neon pink, electric blue, and blinding white seared the snow-capped valley. The sound drifted up, carried by the biting wind. It wasn't just singing anymore, it was industry. After the Grinch's redemption, Whoville had become a tourist destination, the town that saved Christmas. The quaint jing-tinglers and flu-flubers had been replaced by massive amplified sound systems. The commerce was relentless. They sold plush dolls of him. They sold replicas of his sleigh. They sold his story, sanitized and packaged, while he rotted up here, the town mascot, dragged down once a year to cut the turkey and grin while his heart crushed his insides. A low growl started in his throat, vibrating through his chest. "For who Flores," he mimicked, the words dripping with venom. "De who Dores." Below, a massive screen erected in the town square flickered to life. It was the mayor, not the one from the old days, but his son, a slick Who with teeth that looked like piano keys and a voice like greased plastic. "Citizens of Whoville," the mayor boomed, his voice echoing off the mountain face, shaking the stalactites in the Grinch's lair. "This year we aim for the record, the decibel of joy. We want the universe to hear us. We want the star-belly sneetches on the beaches of elsewhere to know that we are the capital of cheer." The crowd below roared. The sound hit the Grinch like a physical blow. He staggered back, clutching his chest. The pain was blinding. His heart gave a massive lurching heave, expanding against the bone cage of his chest. 3 sizes, he thought, tears of pain leaking from his eyes. It's gonna kill me. Their joy is killing me. He retreated into the dark recesses of the cave. He passed the workbenches, dusty and covered with cobwebs. He passed the old sleigh, now rotten on its runners. He stopped in front of a mirror, a shard of reflective glass stuck into a fissure in the rock. The face staring back was gaunt. The green fur was patchy, revealing gray scarred skin beneath. But the smile was still there. It curled upward, stretching the skin until it tore slightly at the corners. "They want noise," the Grinch whispered to the silence of the cave. "They want the universe to hear them." He walked over to the taxidermic dog and stroked the cold head. "Then let us give them the sound they will never forget, Max. Let us give them the great silence."
Chapter 2: The Architect of Sound. The preparation took 3 weeks. The Grinch did not go down to the town. He let the rumors swirl. The Whos assumed he was preparing a surprise for the Jubilee. They were right, of course. He worked with a fervor he hadn't felt in a decade. The lethargy of his depression vanished, replaced by a cold, mechanical precision. He raided the depths of Mount Crumpet, digging into the caverns that ran deep beneath the earth, mining sulfur, niter, and heavy metals. He repurposed the old inventions. The ramshackle contraptions he had once used to steal stockings were dismantled and reassembled into engines of a different purpose. He built the sonic slicer. He built the tinsel strangler. But his masterpiece was the gift. It was the day before Christmas Eve when the invitations were sent. The Grinch did not use the mail. He used the wind. Thousands of red envelopes weighted with lead coins rained down upon Whoville. The mayor picked one up from the steps of City Hall. He tore it open with manicured claws. "Citizens of Whoville," the script read in jagged calligraphy, "you are cordially invited to the summit. The Grinch has prepared the Feast of Feasts. The ultimate gift awaits. Come to the cave at midnight. Bring your horns, bring your drums, bring your lungs. We shall make history." "A feast!" the mayor shouted to the gathering crowd. "He's finally done it! He's opening the peak!" A cheer went up, so loud it triggered a minor avalanche on the north face of the mountain. High above, the Grinch watched through a telescope. He saw Cindy Lou Who, now a woman of 20, with weary eyes and a skepticism that didn't fit the town's brand, standing at the back of the crowd. She wasn't cheering. She was looking up at the mountain, her brow furrowed. "Smart girl," the Grinch murmured. "Stay home, Cindy." But he knew she wouldn't. The curiosity of the Whos was as insatiable as their appetite for sugar. Chapter 3: The Red Feast. As the sun set on Christmas Eve, the procession began. It looked like a river of fire flowing uphill. Torches, flashlights, and glow sticks bobbed in the darkness. The sound preceded them, a rhythmic chanting of Christmas carols, accompanied by the beating of drums and the blasting of electro-Who cardio flukes.
The Grinch stood at the entrance of his cave. He had dressed for the occasion. He wore the Santa suit, but he had altered it. The red velvet was dyed a deep, coagulated crimson. The white trim was gray ash. He looked like a saint emerging from a chimney fire. The first of the Whos arrived, breathless and flushed with the exertion of the climb. They poured into the cave, their eyes widening. The Grinch had transformed the lair. The damp stone walls were draped in shimmering metallic curtains that looked like tinsel but smelled of ozone. The floor was covered in a red carpet that squelched slightly underfoot. In the center of the vast main cavern sat a table 100 yards long, groaning under the weight of the food. But this was not the Who pudding and rare Who roast beast of the past. There were mounds of meat that glistened with an iridescent sheen. There were cakes that pulsed slowly as if breathing. There were wines so dark they absorbed the light. "Welcome," the Grinch bellowed, his voice amplified by a collar around his neck. "Welcome, my friends, my tormentors, my neighbors." The Whos cheered, ignoring the middle words. They rushed the table. The gluttony was immediate. They didn't wait for grace. They shoved handfuls of the strange, glistening food into their mouths. The mayor pushed his way to the front, holding a golden goblet. "A toast," he screamed, "to the Grinch, who has truly grown." "To growth," the Grinch said softly. He watched them eat. He watched the grease run down their chins. He watched their pupils dilate as the chemical compounds in the food, mild hallucinogens mixed with muscle relaxants, began to take effect. Cindy Lou Who was there. She stood near the entrance, holding the hand of her younger brother. She wasn't eating. She was staring at the walls. She reached out and touched the metallic curtain. She pulled her hand back. Her finger was bleeding. The curtain was made of razor wire painted silver. "Mr. Grinch," she called out, her voice cutting through the slurping sounds of the feast. The Grinch looked at her. For a second, the old memory flickered. A glass of water, a pat on the head. But then his heart gave a violent kick, a spasm of pain so intense his vision blurred. The mercy died. "The doors," the Grinch said.
Massive slabs of rock, counterweighted by chains hidden in the shadows, slammed down over the cave entrance. The boom was louder than any drum. The eating stopped. The Whos looked around, confusion struggling through the haze of the drugged food. "Is this part of the show?" the mayor asked, laughing nervously. "A captive audience, eh?" "Captive," the Grinch repeated. He stepped up onto the dais where his chair sat. He loomed over them. "You wanted the decibel of joy. You wanted the universe to hear you." He reached behind his chair and pulled a large iron lever. "I have listened to you for 53 years, the Grinch said, his voice dropping to a growl. "I listened when I was a child and you threw rocks at my difference. I listened when I lived in the cold. I listened when I came down and tried to be one of you. But you are not a people. You are a mouth, a gaping, screaming maw that consumes silence and excretes noise." "Now," the Grinch smiled, revealing teeth filed to needle points, "it is my turn to play the music." He pushed the lever forward. Chapter 4, The Symphony of Ruin. From the shadowed recesses of the cave ceiling, the speakers lowered. They were not normal speakers. They were industrial sonic cannons, salvaged from mining equipment, designed to shatter granite with sound waves. "Prepare for the carol," the Grinch whispered. He put on a pair of heavy industrial earmuffs. The first note wasn't music, it was a frequency, a low, vibrating hum that rattled the teeth in the skulls of the Whos. It was the brown note of Christmas. The Whos clutched their stomachs. The food they had gorged on began to rebel. The mayor doubled over, vomiting a stream of iridescent sludge onto the red carpet. Then the volume spiked. It was a recording. It was them. It was a loop of Fahu Forest, but layered 1,000 times, pitched up, pitched down, distorted, and amplified to 160 decibels. The sound was physical. It hit the crowd like a pressure wave. Windows in the back of the cave shattered. The glass of the taxidermic case holding Max cracked.
The Whos screamed, but they could not hear themselves. Their eardrums ruptured instantly. Blood poured from their ears, staining their pristine winter coats. They fell to their knees, clawing at their heads, trying to dig the sound out. Cindy Lou Who huddled against the rock door, shielding her brother. She screamed the Grinch's name, but he was lost in the conducting. The Grinch stood on the table, conducting the chaos with a bone baton. He was laughing, but the sound of his laughter was lost in the cacophony. He felt the vibrations in his feet, in his bones, and yes, in his heart. The pressure in his chest was immense. The sound waves were massaging the enlarged muscle, forcing it to beat in time with the chaotic rhythm. It was agony, but it was also ecstasy. He was weaponizing his own heartbeat. Louder, he thought, louder. He cranked the dial on his control box. The sonic cannons shifted pitch. They moved into the high frequencies, the range that shatters crystal and liquefies soft tissue. The decorations came alive. The silver razor wire curtains began to oscillate, whipping around like living tendrils. The Whos, blind with pain and disoriented by the sound, stumbled into them. The tinsel sliced. The festive gore began. It wasn't a battle, it was a blender. The mayor, crawling on his hands and knees, looked up at the Grinch. His face was a mask of red. He mouthed the word, "Why?" The Grinch looked down. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small red ornament. He dropped it. It landed in the muck in front of the mayor. It was a heart monitor. The screen showed a flat line. "Because you wouldn't let me die in peace," the Grinch thought. The climax of the song approached, the great cymbal crash. The Grinch routed all the power of Mount Crumpet, the geothermal generator, the stolen batteries from the town grid into the final blast. The speakers glowed white hot. "The Whodores!" The shockwave was visible. It ripped through the air, distorting the light. When it hit the crowd, it didn't just deafen them, it stopped their hearts. The sheer percussive force arrested the sinus rhythm of every Who in the room. They dropped all at once, like marionettes with their strings cut. Chapter 5: The Descent of Silence. The silence that followed was heavier than the mountain itself. The Grinch stood on the table, his chest heaving. Smoke curled from the speakers. The smell of burnt electronics and iron filled the air. He pulled the earmuffs off. Silence. Beautiful, heavy, suffocating silence. He looked over the sea of bodies, the red suits, the green trim, the tangled limbs. It looked like a spilled toy box. He hopped down from the table, his boots splashing in the aftermath. He walked to the door. He pressed the release mechanism. The stone slab groaned and lifted. Cold, fresh air rushed in, swirling the mist of blood and smoke. Cindy Lou Who was sitting by the door. She was slumped over, her arms still wrapped around her brother. Her eyes were open, staring at nothing. A single trickle of blood ran from her nose. The Grinch stopped. He looked at her for a long time. He waited for the pang of regret. He waited for the heart to shrink, for the tears to come. He checked his pulse. Thump, thump, steady, strong, normal. The swelling had gone down. The pressure was released. He stepped over her body and walked out onto the precipice. Below, Whoville was dark. The power surge he had drawn for the weapon had blown the grid. The neon lights were dead. The screens were black. The music had stopped. Snow began to fall, large, soft flakes that muffled the world even further. The Grinch took a deep breath. The air was crisp and clean, untainted by the smell of roasting meats or sugary sweets. He walked back into the cave, stepping carefully through the carnage. He went to the corner where Max lay. He picked up the stiff taxidermy dog and tucked him under his arm. "Come on, Max," he said softly. "It's too crowded in here now." He packed a bag, a few tools, a loaf of stale bread, a book. He left the cave, the tomb of the Whos, and began to climb higher, up past the peak of Mount Crumpet, up to the jagged needle of rock that pierced the clouds, where the air was too thin for singing and the wind was too loud for conversation. He sat down on the highest pinnacle, his legs dangling over the edge of the world. He looked down at the dark, dead spot in the valley that was once Whoville. "Merry Christmas," he whispered to the void. And the void, in its infinite kindness, said nothing back. Chapter 6. The Legend of the North. The aftermath was not discovered for weeks. When the confusing lack of commerce was finally noted by the outside world, a team of rangers from the wider region of Newell was sent to investigate. They found the town empty, the lights off, the breakfast tables set with cold oatmeal. They found the trail of footprints leading up the mountain. They found the cave. The report filed by the lead ranger was redacted heavily before being released to the public. It described a mass casualty event caused by structural failure and acoustic trauma. It did not mention the razor wire tinsel. It did not mention the look of terror frozen on the face of the mayor. They tried to find the perpetrator. They sent drones up to the peak. They sent helicopters, but they found nothing. Just a set of large footprints that vanished into the blizzards of the north and a small glass eye from a stuffed dog half buried in the snow. Whoville was never repopulated. It became a dark legend, a place where the snow felt colder and the wind sounded like screaming. Children in neighboring towns were told the story, but not the Dr. Seuss version. They were told the cautionary tale. "Don't be too loud," the mothers would whisper as they tucked their children in. "Don't want too much. Don't sing too high."
"Why?" the children would ask. "Because the Grinch is listening," the mothers would say, extinguishing the candle, "and his heart can only take so much." The legend grew. They said he was still out there, the king of silence, the saint of solitude. And sometimes, on the clearest, coldest nights of winter, if you stood at the edge of the valley and listened very, very closely, you wouldn't hear singing. You wouldn't hear bells. You would hear the rhythmic, heavy thump, thump, thump of a heart that had grown too big for a world this small, beating its warning drum into the eternal night. The epilogue, the survivor. Years later, in a sanitarium in the jungle of Newell, an old woman sat in a rocking chair. She was blind and she was deaf. She had been found wandering the base of Mount Crumpet, half frozen 3 days after the event. She never spoke. She never interacted with the nurses. She simply rocked. But once a year, on Christmas Eve, she would begin to weep. Not soft, silent tears, but racking, heaving sobs that shook her frail body. A young nurse, new to the ward, once tried to comfort her. She placed a hand on the old woman's shoulder. "It's okay," the nurse said, forgetting the woman could not hear. "It's Christmas. It's a time for joy." The old woman stopped rocking. She turned her sightless eyes toward the nurse. Her lips, cracked and dry, parted. "He didn't hate Christmas," the woman croaked, her voice a rusted hinge that hadn't opened in decades. The nurse froze. "Who? The Grinch?" The old woman smiled, and it was a grotesque mirror of the smile that had once looked down from the mountain. "He didn't hate Christmas," the woman whispered. "He hated the noise, and we were the noise." She leaned in close, grabbing the nurse's wrist with a grip of iron. "Are you quiet, child? Is your heart quiet?" I don't know," the nurse stammered. "Better make sure,"
the old woman said, releasing her and leaning back into the chair. He's still checking. He's always checking. She began to rock again. Thump, 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 thump. The nurse backed away, terrified. She ran from the room, leaving the door open, and into the hallway, drifting from the old woman's room, came a sound. It wasn't weeping anymore. It was a low, humming vibration. The woman was humming. For who, for es, de who, de res. But she was humming it backward, a dirge, a summoning. Outside, the snow began to fall, and high in the distance, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine, iron, and old, cold blood.
Well, that was a twist. Leave a comment with your thought. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. It's free and keeps you notified on all the stories to come.